everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Patrick from Gelato, and today I'm going to talk about how to build your own gasless NFT rollup. So kicking things off, maybe a quick introduction. I'm leading BD at Gelato, also doing partnerships. Feel free to scan this NFT, where you will basically get your own sort of NFT for this talk. Maybe as a quick intro question to all of you, how many of you already did like mint their own NFT already on like some sort of chain? Maybe quickly raise your hand. Okay. Because I think that that's like very important for this talk. That basically sets the stage. Because thinking about NFTs in general, and for those of you already did go through the painful process sometimes of minting your own NFT, especially on mainnet, you can really see why some NFT collections have some problems in like gaining mainstream adoption. And two great examples for that have been like the most recent mint from Azuki, where they basically took a haircut on like their market cap by like 50%, just by like creating the same sort of art for their second NFT drop. And they did raise a significant amount of ETH with that second drop, which obviously affected their user base. And the second thing that you can see here are the sort of gas statistics back when there was like the mint from Yuga Labs on the other side on ETH. And there was like on the height you had to pay for like a normal token swap on UniV3 almost 4K USD to like do a normal token swap, which really basically impacted the whole chain and made it like unusable for a lot of users, since they basically had to pay back then 1.5 ETH to do like a simple transaction. So the main focus points within the talk will be about like the current state of the NFT market, about like the complexities of user onboarding and why so many NFT projects fail, especially in that bear market, and then ways of how to improve that sort of user experience that we currently see within the NFT market. So maybe just to talk about like numbers, you can see here like the average volume on marketplaces, and what you can see here with this beige bar here, you can see that that with like the launch of Blur, there has been like a significant increase in volume on NFT marketplaces in general. Obviously they did an airdrop that impacted it, but with Blur we really saw a real competitor popping up to OpenSea, and they're now having like the majority of the market share of NFT volume in general, and they are continuing to grow. But what this really shows is NFT volumes have stabilized, even though a lot of people on Twitter are talking about like NFTs are dead. There's still like a steady influx of new traders and existing traders trading their NFTs, which obviously results in volume that can be leveraged for a lot of projects. Looking more into the user experience side of things, I think all of you guys are like quite aware of those sort of screens. You can see that there are like a lot of problems when you do your first transaction. Like even before that, you need to write down a seed phrase, you need to remember 12 words, and if you don't do that, then you basically lose all your money. And even then, after you did that, after you successfully created your wallet, you still need to figure out like what are those sort of gas fees, how do they work, how do I like submit the transaction successfully, and how can I like improve to like not pay as much as I need to, but rather like just make an efficient transaction without really needing to care about gas fees. So summarizing the sort of problems that generally are there within like NFTs, but also Web3 in general, you can really see the problem of like self-custody, of how we onboard users right now, that they basically need to figure all of this out themselves. MetaMask already doing a great job of onboarding their users and educating them, but still it's like very clunky compared to like onboarding within like Web2. And then there's such a thing as ETH, that you need like an actual token to like pay for gas fees. So basically users need to figure out like, how do I get ETH onto my wallet? Remembering when I first like made my first transaction on ETH a few years back, I didn't really figure out at first like how much ETH I actually will need to have for like doing a swap on Uniswap. So that's like something that on-ramp providers are tackling right now, but that still needs to improve. And then generally speaking about how to make a transaction, and you also like worrying about gas fees, you actually need to figure out how this whole like gas consumption works, how to submit a transaction, and what transaction finality is, and that your transaction can actually revert after you hit that button. As well as then obviously front running, you can be exploited even though you don't know it. Doing a swap on Uniswap, you basically get it front run, especially on Ethereum, and other people are profiting of your lack of knowledge at the start. And as a result, that basically makes or sets the stage for like Web3 being like right now only accessible for like a few users, like in the grand scheme of things, because if you really want to target Web2 users, you basically need to abstract away all those complexities, and you need to make it like easier to onboard them. But I think the greater Ethereum ecosystem already knows that, and there's like a lot of things that are right now in the works to create better infrastructure and create better UX to onboard the next billion users, which everybody obviously wants to do. And first, there's like obviously a big need for like a secure data availability layer, which Ethereum can provide. And Ethereum by far has outpaced like all the other L1s and other solutions that were on the market. And we are now in the phase where we see a lot of roll-ups gaining market share and also exceeding Ethereum in terms of daily transactions, which is great because like the theory from Ethereum or their tactic with like scalability through roll-ups really comes to life right now. And we see that with Arbitrum having a very vibrant DeFi ecosystem by now, as well as other protocols and ecosystems really scaling Ethereum as a whole. And other examples include now app chains, basically, with first DYDX starting on a different stack, but now chains that build on OP stack, like for example Base that just announced their mainnet, as well as Zora, who basically build a home for NFTs on top of OP stack, and Arbitrum is working on Arbitrum Orbit, and Polygon is having their supernets, Avalanche has their subnets, ZK Sync has their own tech stack for app chains, and that basically gives us an additional layer of scalability because apps that get too big for L2 can then scale into their own separate L2 or even their L3 depending on which tech stack they use. And we at Gelado, we think about it also to like, how can we improve the user experience as a whole? And some of our products allow you to, for example, have gasless transactions, and we see this as like a big tendency in the future because future projects that are basically deploying on those L2s or L3s will only pay like a fraction of the gas fees that we have today. And we're Gelado, what we want to do is basically abstract away that sort of complexity from the user and rather let protocols sponsor gas fees, which in any sense doesn't really cost them that much thinking about user acquisition costs because they would probably pay 10 or $100 per month on those L2s or L3s to serve gasless transactions to all their users because we're talking about an average gas fee from like probably a fraction of a cent, especially for additional rollups. And obviously, another big catalyst that is coming up is EIP 4844 on Ethereum, basically proto-dank sharding. I won't go into the weeds here because it shouldn't be too technical, but basically it will allow Ethereum to scale further, and it will also allow to basically have higher throughput as well as lower gas fees, which not just impacts Ethereum, but also obviously impacts the greater rollup ecosystem that is built on top of Ethereum, and that will allow us to have lower gas fees overall. And make like the user experience generally better. But then we don't really, like with lower gas fees, we didn't really solve like the issue we saw before with like MetaMask. But we can do that with gas abstraction. And what does that mean? Basically, you can do gasless transaction. That is an example from Fantium. They're using Gelato. And what they basically did, they integrated Gelato Relay to have gasless transactions. And as you can see here, there were like 2 MetaMask pop-ups, but on none of them, they actually paid gas fees. They just signed something to authorize the spending. That's like the first thing that they need to do. And then they just say, hey, I'm okay, I want to buy this NFT. And then Gelato basically takes care of the rest. And like that, they just need to basically approve the payment to actually buy this NFT, but they never really touch the actual chain as a user. So they really have, like in that case, they really abstracted away like the blockchain complexities that users normally face. Maybe to quickly explain you how this works, basically what we do is we focus on like decentralized backend services. And with Gelato, what you can do, you can really think about it as a module on those chains to allow you to access automation, off-chain computation, or gasless transactions. And in that case that we just saw with Fantium, they basically just took gasless transactions, integrated that into their smart contracts, and now basically users don't really need to care about those sort of low-level blockchain complexities anymore that we see in most dApps today. And we also do that like in a decentralized fashion. Obviously, we're in Web3, we want to do that. And we're then taking care of those executions on behalf of the user. So users don't really need to figure out how gas fees work anymore. They can really rely on Gelato to take care of that. In the case of Fantium, and also other protocols are now expanding into that direction with the notion of something like account abstraction, as well as like with smart contract wallets. There are multiple opportunities for us to improve that user experience. That basically summarizes the sort of products with off-chain computation, automation, and gasless transactions. For protocols that have already integrated Gelato, here's like a bigger ecosystem. We have like all the cool DeFi projects as well as like, or including Beefy, Maker, Synthetics, Gwenta, as well as gaming projects. So if you're a dApp developer and you want to do something like that, just reach out to us on Twitter or just talk to me after the talk here. And that already includes like over 400 projects. So there was like a small section of the projects that actually integrated. We've already more than 5.1 million transactions executed on all EVM chains. If you're interested, that's like the QR code to the website, not another NFT. Yeah, in case you're interested in building something similar or you're building something for the hackathon later this week, reach out to us and we can help you creating a cool project. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, everyone. If there are any questions, just like raise your hand. Okay, awesome, cool. Yeah, that's the way to go. Cool, thanks everybody.